next video in my Introduction to Objective Personality series. And this one's going to talk about saviors, demons, and jumpers. I know it's been a while since I put up a video. I've been kind of busy lately, so sorry about the delay. I'm getting back into it again. So first of all, what are savior functions? So the savior functions are functions we feel responsible towards using in order to ensure a desirable outcome. So like if we have savior SI, for example, we feel responsible towards organizing the sensory information, the facts and the details, so that we can get the outcomes we want to in life. We spend a lot of time using savior functions, oftentimes unconsciously, just on autopilot. We're not even aware that we're doing it much of our time. Usage of these functions are easy and obvious. We often take them for granted. And we often think that other people use these functions as well. Oh, I use FE. Well, FE is obvious. Everybody should use FE. And it turns out that not everybody is constantly looking at the world in an FE lens or an SI lens or whatever that savior function is. We are confident in using our savior functions to solve problems in life. And, we call them saviors because they literally help us save the day. Savior functions are just something that we tend to do automatically. And we don't need to show them off or prove ourselves with our savior functions. We just, see them as, something we take for granted. They're just on autopilot. They're just kind of a normal part of our being. Now, one myth, though, is that we always enjoy using our savior functions. And this is not always true. Yes, the savior functions come easy to us. Yes, we tend to use them frequently. We tend to feel responsible for using them. But that doesn't mean we always like to do it. For example, I have savior SI. Do I like cleaning my room? Do I like filing taxes? No, but I feel responsible for the day-to-day maintenance and organization of my sensory world. Okay, now let's talk about demon functions. So demon functions are those functions that we don't feel personally responsible towards using them. Now, we may want the results that come from the demon functions, but we want someone else to do them for us. So for example, I have demon NE. So I oftentimes want NE, I want the different possible concepts and ideas, but I tend to think that somebody else should gather that NE concepts for me. And that's often how we feel with our demons. We tend to underuse the demon functions even when it's in our best interest to do so, because not everything in life can be solved with saviors. So like if your savior FI, for example, and you're always, using your personal values as a criterion to decide things, sometimes that's not always in the best interest because you have to look at the TE side of the coin. What's actually working for the tribe? So you can overlook important information if you're all in on using your savior functions. Demon functions tend to require more conscious effort to use, and we may lack confidence in using them. So a tidal wave results when we feel stuck from overusing our savior functions and underusing our demon functions. So what happens here is that we can keep repeating the same life problems over and over again. We keep making the same kinds of mistakes. We wonder why they keep happening. It's just like a tidal wave has washed over us. we feel helpless, we don't know what to do, because we're overlooking that one side of the coin. We're overlooking the demon side. Now, what can also happen with our demon functions is we can paradoxically sometimes become overconfident using them or overestimating our skill. So yes, we can often be underconfident and insecure in using our demons, but then there can be times when we overestimate. So, our demon functions, we have a harder time really assessing our true skill in using. So when we overestimate our skill with our demon functions and we want to show them off, often unconsciously, this is called peacocking. Kind of like a peacock is, strutting its feathers. Look how great looking I am. And this can happen with demon functions because the demon functions, because we don't naturally use them as much, when we do happen to use the demon functions successfully, that tends to stand out more to us. So oftentimes what happens is we can mistake our demon functions for our savior functions because we remember that one time we were successful in using our demons. So for example, like an ENFP mistypes as an ISTJ because they remember that one time when they cleaned their room and they did it successfully. Yeah, they cleaned up, but what were they doing most of the time? They were complaining about doing it. They were just playing with stuff that they just found, which is just gathering. So this is an example of how we can type ourselves upside down, and it's a very common phenomenon that happens. So, like if you look at the different human needs, the DI human need for self. So let's say you're savior DI. You may think that you're the opposite, savior DE. You say to yourself, I desperately want the tribe's approval, but then you go and force your own opinions on everyone else, which is self being higher than tribe human need. Or suppose that you're savior DE. You may say to yourself, I think I'm savior DI because I want to do things my own way. But then you go and poll the tribe to get a consensus. So you're still looking at the tribe's reasons or the tribe's values. That's DE. Oops. Or say you're savior OI, organize. But then you say to yourself, I love gathering new things. But then what you're really doing most of the time is just spending endless hours on the same shit. Or say you're savior OE, your savior organize, your savior gather. But you identify as savior OI because I'm such a good planner you don't even know. But then what you're doing is you're going and searching for random shit on the internet until you're overwhelmed and filled with anxiety. So you're overgathering and you're not organizing or narrowing any of it down at all. So these are just common ways that people often type themselves upside down. Okay, so how can you determine demon functions? So one good way to do it is to track somebody's nonverbal cues. So in a demon state, somebody's speech will typically slow down and their body language is more awkward and uncomfortable. So you can kind of see how I changed the pace in speaking there. That's not a natural state. It's kind of more difficult to talk. It's more awkward. That's what happens when somebody's in a demon state. Also, if somebody goes on about something they discovered in life and realized, oh yeah, I need to be more organized, for example. Let's say they're savior OE, and then they discovered this organization, and use a planner and I organize my day, and it's done wonders for my life, and it's greatly improved my life, and I'm going to tell everybody about it, and I'm going to preach about it. That's probably a demon, because naturally for most of their lives, they've been using OE, gather, and then later on they discover this need for importance. So OI is a demon, even though they might constantly be talking and preaching about it. It was discovered later in life. It's not what normally came natural to them. Okay, so everybody has two savior functions and two demon functions in their type. Now, the savior functions can either be the first and second functions, that's called a standard type, or they can actually be the first and the third functions, which is a jumper. So for example, with an ISTJ, if their savior functions are SI and TE, that's called the standard version of ISTJ, but some ISTJs actually jump over NE in favor of FI as a savior. So those ISTJs that have SI and FI as saviors are called jumpers because they're jumping over that second function. And then the demon functions in the standard types would be the bottom two, the third, and the fourth, or they can be the second and the fourth functions in the case of jumpers. So like with a standard ISTJ, that would be FI and NE would be the demons, but in a jumper ISTJ, the demons would actually be TE and NE. So each of the 16 types can be further divided into two versions, a standard version and a jumper version. And this is going to expand it to 32 types. Okay, so here's the ISTJ up here. I've done the savior functions in blue and the demon functions in red. Okay, and here's the ISTJ jumper version. Okay, and let's do another example with the ENFP. So ENFP's function stack is NEFI, TESI. For a standard ENFP, the savior functions are NE and FI. Okay, they're highlighted in blue. And then the demon functions in red are TE and SI. Okay, now in the jumper ENFP, the savior functions are NE and TE. They're the first and third functions, and the demon functions, the second and the fourth, are FI and SI. So this table just shows all 32 types, including the jumpers. So I've shown the standard versions of the types in blue here, and then the jumper versions of the types are shown in red. Okay, a little bit more about jumper types. So jumper types are not at all uncommon. About 35 to 40% of people are jumpers. Now, where I got the statistic from is from people in the objective personality community that have been officially typed by Dave and Shannon. And about 30, and that's about 400 people, and about 35 to 40% of those came out as a jumper type. Okay, one myth is that if you're a jumper, your third function is actually stronger than your second function. That is not actually the case. The second function is still stronger, but if you're a jumper, what will happen is you'll respect your third function more than your second function. So therefore, you'll feel more responsible towards using your third function, and you may prefer to use that third function more because it's a savior function. You feel responsible for it, you feel confident in using it, you often use it frequently, but your second function is still actually stronger than your third. Jumper types are not looping. Now, looping is a term that's used in some of these other type communities where, like, you're all in at your third function, and you're overlooking the second function. It kind of has a negative connotation to it because it implies an imbalance. So like if you're an ISTJ, they might say you're in an SI-FI loop because you're all in on the two introverted functions, and it's not balanced out with TE, and that's a bad thing. That implies imbalance. Or if you're an ENFP, you're in a NETE loop. You're all in on the extroverted functions. You're overlooking the FI function, and they talk about it as if there's some kind of imbalance there. But there is no looping concept in objective personality, and it's no better or worse to be a jumper version or a standard version of the type. Okay, so this table shows the letter pairings of the 32 types. So objective personality kind of likes to divide people, savior functions, by letters. So the ST types are shown in blue here. And an ST type just means that you have sensing and thinking as your savior function. So ST types are like reporters. They report the facts as they are, and they bang the blocks together and make things work. And one thing that you'll notice here is that you'll have a type here like ISFJ jumper. So the jumper version of the ISFJ is SITI, okay? This type would actually be considered an ST because the saviors are a sensing function and a thinking function. Even though if you're just looking at the 16 Myers-Briggs type, it's ISFJ. But the ISFJ just means that this person has the cognitive function stack of ISFJ, which is SI, FE, TI, and NE. But the SITI has ST saviors, so it's classified as an ST, okay? And then the SFs are in pink. So the SFs are those that are tracking the value of things in the real sensory world. They're often aware of things like culture, currency, popularity. These are shown in pink. So the ISTJ over here, the SI-FI jumper version, would actually be classified as an SF, according to their savior functions. And then the NTs are shown in green. So the NTs are those that like to figure things out in the abstract, puzzle things, really get at the underlying reason why. And sometimes they can have a nerdy archetype, although they're not always nerdy, of course, but sometimes they can come off that way. And then you have the NFs in yellow. So the NFs are thinking about the value and meaning in the abstract. And, archetypally, they can be thought of as kind of hippies, although they're not always hippies, but sometimes that term can be thrown around there. So that's a bit about savior functions and demon functions and the jumper types. So stay tuned for my next video in the series where I'll be talking about animal stackings. And animal stackings are going to allow us to expand the code in objective personality from 32 types all the way to 128 types. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for notifications to be notified when I post a new video up. Have a great day, you all. Bye-bye.